Gotta get my cough out. So yeah, that's my wall right there.
Yeah, well, it looks like an office. It looks like that's your
Yeah.
room that you do your thing at. I can't see that. Let me enlarge it.
It's Sagittarius. I'm not really into astrology and stuff, but I had a friend get that for me.
Yeah.
And it says good things about me, you know. So I like that. I got a picture of Kai there and my my thing over here. So pretty exciting stuff.
Affirmations are really powerful.
Yeah. No, it's well, it's hard to stay positive all the time, you know. So stuff.
It is hard to stay positive all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but I look at that Sagittarius thing, and it says some good things about Sagittariuses, so that feeds into my enormous ego, you know, and keeps me going. That was my attempt at humor. It kind of failed.
Yeah, well, I can relate to that, you know, but then you do have an ego. We're all blessed with one.
Yeah. Too. I don't. Yeah.
No matter how small or large.
Yeah, I think my ego is pretty small. Sometimes I'll say some stuff and people take it the wrong way, but it's meant in a sarcastic way.
Right.
So some people I'm pretty fluent in sarcasm. So, so you were my guest today, and we totally don't even know each other at all, right?
Yeah, right.
You didn't change my diapers when I was.
I gotta tell you though, I sang a lot of Italian arias for you while you were in the crib, and I had that diaper over you so that I wouldn't get hit. And so your young months of life were smiling at me while I was singing Italian arias. That was good for my ego.
Well, so I didn't get any music abilities, so
that's okay.
It didn't take, unfortunately. I think you got all that. All right, Ann Mary. Can I ask you some real estate questions?
Yes.
So the big one, why did you get into real estate?
Well, we had a change in income. Both Ralph and I had worked for the post office, and he resigned and decided to go and take another career. So we had, I don't know how long it was. I think it was 2 or 3 years where we were missing one of our incomes, and we were fine, you know, with my income, but we had definitely had a huge decrease in our anticipated income over those years then. So that was the biggest reason, was we had a loss in income, and we were looking at a possibility of finding a way to make up for it.
Was there like something that you saw, or, you know, like they used to, back in the day, they used to advertise as like real estate courses, you know, on the TV and crazy stuff like that. Was there something or somebody you knew that was like a catalyst to kind of set you down this path?
We saw those Carlton sheets. There was a Carlton sheets, and it was really a powerful encouragement for us. And so we ordered the class that they had, and I can't remember how much it cost. You know, it was pretty small in comparison to, you know, what the promises were to make a lot of money. And I think it was around $100. And then we went to the public library, and honest to God, I think we read every book on landlording and investing in rental income. So for us, that was our education, which I would encourage anybody to do, is to take a lot of time to educate yourself about what you're going to be doing if a person goes into real estate.
Did you find value in that Carlton Sheets course? Because I think the consensus, you did, because I think the consensus, a lot of that stuff is just nonsense, but
found a lot of value in it. I still use that. There was a book of forms that came with that class, and I'm old school, so I don't do a lot of stuff on the computer, but I still use my expense. There was a sheet for your expenses. There was a sheet for your monthly rents. There was there was a tenant application form. I used that for many years until I got hooked up with a a screening service, and then I started using theirs.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, the hardest part is kind of getting started, because they think, oh, you got to have all this money to put down on a property to buy it. How did you guys get that
Well,
money for the deal?
we were lucky because we had enough money for our first property. We had enough cash. And then after and our first duplex only cost us, it was either $32,000 or $34,000, so I mean,
Oh, wow.
that was pretty inexpensive. And then after that, we did take out a line of credit on the house because we had a lot of equity into the house. And so we did take a line of credit then and to have for down payments on properties, as long as the bank would keep loaning us the money and the property showed a positive cash flow. That was kind of how we did it.
I don't know if you can remember, because how many years ago was that?
Let me think now. Alan is 33, so I think 33, probably about 28 years ago, maybe 28 years ago. That's when we bought, I think, our first building, something like 28, I'd say 27, 28 years ago. Yeah. I think it was 28.
Remember, like, when you actually, so you signed the contract, you get the duplex. Do you remember like the emotions you were feeling? Were you scared, or were you excited, or?
I was pretty excited because we had read those books from the library and we had studied that Carlton Sheets course for probably a good year before we found a property that we were willing to grab. Some of the properties that had positive cash flows were in really distressed neighborhoods that we just were not willing to go into. But that was a building over close to UWS, but it was across Belknap, and it was, the upstairs was empty at the time. There were tenants downstairs, but it just we finally had a building that we looked at that we thought we could make it work.
Yeah. How soon after that did you pick up another property?
It was within a year, and that was a triplex out in Gary. And I think with the triplexes, I think that's a better moneymaker than a lot of the duplexes. Of course, I don't know, over the years, it's all been good, but that was that building. And surprisingly enough, over the years, we hung on to those buildings for many, many years. And both of them were always positive. We always made money off of them. I mean, maybe not on paper with depreciation and everything, but we always made, they were always working. They were working for us.
Did you guys go into it with the intention of buying multi-unit properties like that?
Well, we went into it thinking we're kind of see how it goes, one at a time. And I think when we got to about our third or fourth building, and then I remember Ralph saying, this little rental business we have sure is working out nice for us. And every once in a while he'd say that, especially we went through the numbers a lot and we keep track of everything really good. And he would say that often, and which kind of led me to believe that meant we were going to start looking again, so.
Yeah.
So we did look at a lot of properties before we bought the first one, and a lot of properties all the way through. I don't think for as far as the rentals go, we were pretty careful. The flipping ones, we were a little bit more less apprehensive about nabbing.
Oh, so did you do fix and flip too?
Yeah,
no?
we did. We did about 5 or 6, and one of them was a triplex that had gone into foreclosure.
You fixed it up and then resold it? And then
resold it, yeah. One of those buildings we kept for a few years and rented out. And then there was another foreclosure that we bought that we bought it, and then we got it up and running. And it already had a rental license, so we got that one. That didn't take too long, about 3 months or something, we got it up and running.
So how would you analyze a potential property to determine like, hey, this might be a good deal, or we're going to pass on this?
Well, if the building currently would have rent, was a working building and had rents, to see whether or not those rents could be elevated, or knowing from looking at Craigslist or other things online of how much people are getting for rents in that, particular area or whatever, to estimate what your income is going to be and to estimate what your expenditures are going to be. Now, this is just for rentals, not for flips. And so, of course, you've got your yearly expenses of taxes and insurance, your monthly expenses of utilities, and there's all that good stuff. And then those are the big ones. The other thing is to look at the building and see maybe some of the things that need attention building wise, and how long they can be put off, before you have to do them. If there's, if you look at a building and the roof is obviously needs replacing, it's a hard place for an investor to start, because then you got to pour in a big chunk of money to get that repair done. So I would say that, the quality of the building, as far as what would need to get done. Some buildings I think I would just walk away from, because there were tenants living there and it wouldn't work for me, or a building might have. I remember we looked at a building in the West End that had like 3 feet of water in the basement.
Is that a red flag for you?
That's not going to work for us. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you have, after you calculate all that stuff out or try to estimate it, did you have a certain like threshold in terms of cash flow you wanted to hopefully hit, like on a monthly basis?
Well, we never really spent the money that we made off these buildings. I shouldn't say we didn't ever really spend it, but rarely spent the money that we made off of the buildings. So I can't remember. We used to talk about it, but I think it was like $500 a month, or even $300 a month was getting on the low side after you figure out all your expenses. But this was years ago, so
sure.
yeah. But you had to anticipate that some things are going to happen, and are you willing to take that out of either your pool of rental properties? Because after you get a bunch of rental properties, they kind of pay for each other, because you might be making more on one building at a particular time, and then all of a sudden in the other building you got to buy a stove or a couple stoves, or you've got some kind of an issue that's kind of expensive to fix, and so you take it out of that big pool of money from the rental properties as your business, not from that particular building. So those things do happen. It's harder when you only have one building, of course. Then you take it out of your then you take it out of your pocket, because it's got to get done.
Right. That's never fun.
No.
When you were buying these properties, how much were you typically putting down on them?
Well, if they were financed at that time, I think you had to have 20%. And I can't remember. And so that would have been Ralph was always of the opinion that you should put the least amount of down that you have to, and let the bank help you, So, so I'd say 20%, unless the bank, had a program where you could put down less. And then we would do that, pay a little higher interest rate, and obtain the building that way.
Sure. So obviously it sounds, everything sounds great. You're doing real estate, you're making money and stuff like that. But
yeah,
did you ever have like a property you bought where you just it was not worth the headache, or you lost a bunch of money on it?
There was one flip that we didn't really lose any money on it. but it was a mistake from the beginning. And
Why was it a
part of,
mistake?
well, part of the problem was that we were both really busy at the time with our regular jobs. So we couldn't give it the kind of time that we both needed to. And so we, the people that we had helping us were idiots and lazy asses. So we wasted a lot of time with that. And time is money when you're flipping, because you're paying
Right.
taxes, insurance, and all that other stuff, and utilities the whole time. So that eats up a lot of your costs when you're flipping. So, you know, just getting somebody over there to empty out the house of all the crap that was left in it took a long time. And you don't realize what's going on because you're working your other job and you hired some idiot to take care of it. And then you realize you've lost all this time.
So was it a break even essentially at that point from a?
Yeah, I think we pretty much broke even. We might have lost a couple $1,000s on that one.
So was that the last flip you ever did? Like, did you give up flipping after that, or?
It was kind of towards the end there. Kind of towards the end, I would say. I can't remember what we did after that. I think we bought another foreclosure. But that one was a gift from God. That last one we bought.
Why is that?
I had as a real estate agent, I had sold that building for a couple, and it was a duplex. And he had left the basement open to show anybody that would come and look that all of the plumbing and everything was set up underneath the concrete, because he had a bathroom in the basement and then he took it out. So he had left that basement open. Well, this gal bought it, and she had her daughter living upstairs and she lived downstairs. And she was the one that went into foreclosure. While she was living there, she had these cats, and the cats went down in the basement and they peed all over in this sand because the concrete wasn't filled up in the basement. So when it went into foreclosure, at this particular time, the bank was real accommodating to the agent. They had the whole thing cleaned up and painted and the carpet cleaned. So it was nice and clean in there, but the whole building smelled like cat piss. So Ralph and I went in there and we saw what had happened, and we thought we can seal up the cat piss and get this company over there that does remediation. And we thought that would take care of it. The first time we looked at it, Ralph said, no, we're not going to buy it because it's still too high priced. So I watched it, and it was like a month and a half later, they dropped the price down $30,000. Well, then it made a lot more sense. So we bought the building, and that one is one of my biggest money makers, to be quite honest.
So the smell of cat pee was gone forever, right?
It was gone forever.
Thing to get out.
Yeah, it is a tough thing to get out, but because the building was empty, he did a bunch of stuff downstairs, and we sealed it up and painted the floor. And then he had the guy from the company that did it. He had I can't remember, some kind of machine that runs for ionizer. And because the building was empty, he let that sucker run down there for 2 weeks. Told us not to go in there because it could affect you with that ionizing going on in the building. I don't know. We probably went in there a couple of times, but yeah. And so have never had a problem. And now I think I've owned that building for probably another, I don't know how many years, 12 years, something, 15 years.
Time goes quick.
Like yeah. Wonderful tenants in there. It's a beautiful neighborhood. Has a nice 2-car garage, a little extra little house on it. I just put a new roof on it last year, finally. And yeah, the only thing that worries me is they got big trees. Yeah, up kind of, they call it Lower Piedmont now. It used to be called Upper Lincoln Park. So it still has the Lincoln Park zip code, but when the agents list it now, they call it Lower Piedmont. So it's become a more desirable area.
It's always good, right?
Yeah, Piedmont's kind of moved down into Lincoln Park on the other side too, down to Skyline and a little below. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how that works.
So what's the best deal you ever had on a property?
Oh, that one was a good one. Well, on the rentals, I'd say it's kind of always surprising to me, but those lower priced rentals that were in the not so wonderful neighborhoods actually always made money. They were consistent producers. That was a real surprise to me because, you know, you always think that that maybe something nicer or better is going to make more money, but that one did really nice. And then on the flips, all of them except that one that I told you about were good. I don't know. There was one where the property was in the son's name of a trust, and his dad had not been in the house for quite a while. He was in a nursing home, and the son was taking care of wrapping up everything for the dad, and he didn't want the house. And so that one was a really good deal. There was another, this is really weird with some of these flipping houses. Two of the flip houses that we flipped were owned by people who owned these properties, and they had not lived in them for years. They had not lived in them for years, and they have these properties. One was owned by a guy. He moved in with a girlfriend. He had lived with her for like 10 years, and he hadn't lived in his house. And then the other one was the same kind of deal. This woman owned it. I don't know if she planned at some point leaving her husband or what the deal was. Finally, he left her and took a slow boat to heaven, and she decided she was going to sell the house. And I had sent her a letter and asked, you know, I had sent out some letters. I'd gone through the city records and found people that were not living in their house, and wondered what was going on there, and sent her a letter. And she had saved that letter for like 10 years. And then she got a hold of me saying that she wanted to sell the house. And I told her, I said, well, you could get a lot more money if you put this house on the market. I said, but I will give you, I don't know what we said we'd give her for that house. I don't know what it was, 60,000 or something. And she said to me, no, I want to sell it right now. But I was real honest with her. I told her, I said, you can make a lot more money if you sold it on the market. I want to sell it right now. And so I wrote up the contract and we went for it. So yeah, she was anxious to sell. I don't know why.
Did you at a certain point, like you became I know obviously you became a real estate agent. It seems like that's a very popular thing amongst investors, where eventually, you know, they start investing and I don't know if they do it to save on like the transactional fees and stuff like that. If you're going to sell a property or whatever, you save, you know, 2-3% because you don't have to pay. You know, there's really only one agent you got to pay in that scenario. Is that why you did it, or was there other reasons behind it?
I thought it would be beneficial for my real estate business. And part of it was there was a certain tiredness I think I was developing from being a landlord. And I had left the post office because I had that neck injury. So I left the post office. And there was another situation where I thought I could make up the difference in my income. And in hindsight, I just wish that in that process that I would have bought a few more buildings and forget about helping other people find a place to live. I think that financially that would have been more beneficial. Mostly because of the increase in the housing cost. You know, I bought that building, that first building I told you about, paid like $30,000 for it, you know, and you could bet your bottom dollar it's worth a lot more than $30,000 now, you know. So it's kind of amazing the way that's happened. In 2007 and 8, everything took a hit. I can't remember how many buildings we had at that time. We had a lot more. And a lot more units. And at that time, I wanted to unload some of the ones I had the most debt on. And probably should have hung on to them, but I sold them. I still made money off of them. And then I got rid of that debt. And that just seemed like it made me feel better. about not having quite so much debt during that downtown time. In hindsight, I don't know if it was that it would have been that good of a decision anyway. And then sometimes, you have a building and sometimes a tenant kind of POs you and you think to yourself, I don't really like this. What's going on here? I think I'll sell the building, So, I mean, it takes a lot for that to happen, but the building I'm thinking about was a sixplex, and it had a couple of elderly people in there, and I saw that I financially could not keep them happy. So
did you guys ever hit a point where maybe you got sick of dealing with tenants or anything like that, where you're like, I just want to get out of this, or it was always the pros outweigh the cons?
The pro outweighs the cons, and the tenants are decent people. Most tenants are decent people. They have lives just like you do, and they go to work and they work for a living. They want to take care of their family. They have a little bit of entertainment in their life. But most people are really, really good tenants. Working people have decent credit, people that are like you, and so they're not going to be.
I appreciate you saying that.
Well, they're not going to be super duper pigs, and they're not going to let the place deteriorate. They're going to call you before something. If they see water coming through the ceiling, they're going to give you a call, that kind of thing. If the refrigerator stops working, they're going to give you a call, and so you gotta remember that they just want to be treated decently, just like you would treat a friend, and that when they call, you want to respond right away. You want to call them back right away if you miss the call, or answer the phone right away and see what the problem is and see if you can help them with it. Sometimes they have personal problems, but usually they don't like to bother the landlord with their personal problems either. But I've had those tenants too. I'm going to be late with my rent this month because Anthony needed to go to the dentist, and now I have this big dentist bill and I'm not going to be able to pay all my rent, So those kind of things. And, you just kind of trying to put yourself in their place and know that maybe on your roster of tenants, you got one or two that need a little bit of coaching.
Did you have like a threshold in terms of someone being late on rent? Like, okay, you can be this late, but once you hit, whatever that figure is, 30 days or whatever, then we're going to start having some problems maybe?
Yeah, I would call them as soon as I realized it was late. That personal contact, I think, is oftentimes a lot better than a letter. Sometimes it could be a problem with the mail. Sometimes it could be that they simply forgot. Believe it or not, there are people that just simply forget. And sometimes, it's kind of nice now because a lot of landlords, when they do all this online stuff, they have it set up so that the rent goes automatically paid from the tenant's account to their account. And for those newer landlords and the way the world runs right now, I think that is really a positive thing, because then they're dealing with people that are willing to do this, and so their rent just shows up. Just shows up. I'm still old school, so my tenants are sending me checks or money orders or whatever, and I wish I was set up on that kind of a system, because sometimes people will say, well, can you do Venmo or some of this other stuff, and I always say, I don't bank online, so I'm really sorry. I just don't think I can do that then if I don't bank online. You're going to have to. I used to have one girl, she wants to pay me in cash. So that was kind of an issue when we took off for the winter. And
oh, yeah, I bet.
It was like she was afraid to put anything in the mail. So, but she's been paying her rent, so I can't complain.
So how does she pay you?
She pays me with a money order. She goes and gets a money order. Yeah. And she was the one recently who wanted to pay in Venmo, and then she wanted to pay in PayPal, and then she called me and she said, well, I don't know if I really want to do that because they charge a fee. And so I said, I wanted to, at some point I was thinking to myself, how am I going to deal with this? And then I thought, what I could tell her is, this really isn't my problem and you're making it my problem. On your lease, it says you're supposed to send me a check or a money order, by the 1st of the month.
Yeah, I think you're a very empathetic person. You're a very caring person. So you do a
Well,
good
there
job
comes a
of
point.
working with people.
Yeah, but there does come a point, but you don't, some landlords would create it themselves. Like me, create the problem themselves. But she's the only one I've had, and she was a new tenant too, so. Yeah,
So maybe you got to iron out the process a little bit and knock
Yeah.
on wood, hope smooth sailing from here on
Yeah.
out, right?
yeah. And then after I had spent some time with her, after she moved in the first time, I went over for a couple of things, and I realized she was a little OCD. And then I realized I was going to have to deal with her. She's a little OCD. I think she obsesses about some things more than the average person. So, but otherwise,
So
she's clean, and her kids are well behaved, and she's got a great job, and she's pleasant, and my handyman like going over there because she's very good looking. So it's a win-win situation.
So do you or Ralph have any like regrets related to real estate?
Yeah, that we didn't buy more when we had the energy to do it all, because now we're getting older. Well, I still have enough energy. If somebody moves out, I still have enough energy to go in for, several hours and go there and really clean like the devil. Because I always do. That's one other thing is I think things should be really clean. But I don't have as much go get them as I used to. But the clean thing is really important. I remember one time I was cleaning, and because I cleaned like crazy if somebody moved out, and someone had called about looking at the apartment. And so while I was waiting for this gal, she was looking for her son. He was a college student. And when she came in the door, the look of relief on her face was really something, because this is more of a collegey neighborhood that was in. And she said, "This is the first clean apartment I've seen. I would not let my son rent any of the other ones that we saw today," so that was nice to hear. And that I kind of thought that was a perk, was for Duluth has got a real low, always had a real low rate of available apartments. So I felt really good about that. People will take crap if, and then the other thing too about this cleanliness thing is if your apartment is really filthy, chances are you're going to attract somebody who's really happy to live like that. And then the next time it's empty, it's going to be worse than it was the time before. So, and then that gets really gross. So,
Sure.
the quality of what you're selling out there deteriorates.
So, I guess my only other question is, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe looking to get into real estate or thinking about getting into real estate?
It is to not worry about the amount of time that you're going to spend before you buy that first building. When we were looking, I was starting to get a little discouraged because there wasn't something that I thought would work. We looked at a lot of properties and there was nothing that seemed to work. And so I would say that to do that, always watch the numbers. Make sure that on paper you've got a positive cash flow and you haven't missed anything. And I think those would be really good to watch the numbers all along. And the other thing is not it for your own personal use, not to count on taking money out of that building for your own personal use. Like I mean, at some point, you want to, but not to count on it, because it's not always going to happen every month. And let's see, I'm trying to look at my little ideas here. And not to be afraid to get dirty yourself, to go and do a lot of things. When we first had that business, Ralph did a lot of painting. He was painting all the time when we had buildings, his time off from work, or during the day if he was working afternoons. And a lot of the times I showed up to show apartments in my mailman outfit right after work there. And I mean, it takes time out of the rest of your life, and sometimes it's enjoyable and sometimes it's a pain in the butt. I've showed a lot of apartments when I've come home and Ralph says, well, how did that work out? And I look at him and I go, I don't want this one. I hope they don't tell me they want it. I mean, you start to read people pretty well after a while, what will work for you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that
so
screening, the other thing is get a screening service as soon as you're ready, get hooked up. I've hooked up with tenantreports.com, and what they have to offer is wonderful. Things have changed in the world with what you can ask and what you can't of applicants. Know what those things are, and if you yourself want to check on the tenant, you can always ask for references. Make sure that you're real clear in your criteria of what kind of credit score you're going to require of people. And that they have no evictions, that they have no criminal background. There are certain things you can ask, and it changes from state to state on that criminal background thing. I think it does. But if you're wanting to know what you're getting yourself into with a new tenant, if they rent it from like a mom and pop, sometimes those landlords will be real open as to what the tenant is like and what their relationship has been like. And especially if they're good, it's always more fun to sing someone's praises. But now I think because of the way things are now, if someone were to call me and I had a tenant that was probably troublesome, I'm trying to be diplomatic here, that was troublesome, I would say, I'll just tell you that I would never rent to this tenant again. And you can take with what you want from that comment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that's the best way to handle it. But oftentimes, and sometimes you get a mom and pop landlord on there and they say, I had nothing trouble with there. She said she had no dogs. Then she brought in 5. I mean, they'll tell you the whole 9 yards, which happened to me once. And it was kind of interesting because it was a girl I went to high school that wanted to rent from me. And wow. I called the mom and pop, and I would never rent to that girl again. I'm so glad she's leaving. She said she didn't have a dog. She came in with 3 big dogs. My yard looks like hell, and she kept going on and on and on and on. And so I had to let this girl that I went to high school with know that I would not rent to her.
It happens. No, it's all good stuff, man. I appreciate you doing this. Is there anything else you think that's maybe I missed, or that, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff I missed, but anything else you want to?
Oh, if you're a person that can't say no, don't get into the business. I'd say that.
Just from primarily dealing with tenants and stuff like that, you're gonna.
Yeah.
You want to be a good person and give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes that's probably going to bite you.
Right. Yeah. And then, there's times where you have to tell somebody that you can't rent to them anymore. And, that's why it is kind of nice to have a relationship with them, because most often they know that they're going to have to move long before you tell them. And I know that happened to me once, and it was the tenant was a nurse. He was a nice guy, and I knocked on the door and I said, I had the letter in my hand to let him know that he was gonna have to move. And I looked at him and I said, I am really sorry. I said, but you're gonna have to move. And he took my letter and he looked at me and he said, that's okay, Mary. I knew that was gonna happen. I'll be out by the weekend. And he was. So I was real lucky with that one. There have been other ones I have not been quite so lucky with. And oh, that eviction thing is heartbreaking. So
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
sure
and
it
you
is.
can't evict someone just because they live differently than you, and so you get to pick and choose what you're going to evict them for. But I'd say non-payment of rent is probably the biggest reason that you need to evict people for.
Yeah, in Minnesota, this just popped in my head. In Minnesota, did they have anything like during COVID where they had or in Wisconsin, I guess too, a moratorium on people not having to pay rent? Like I know that was a big thing in California and
Yes,
New
they
York
did.
and some other-
Yeah, they did. They did. I had all of my tenants paid their rent. All of my tenants were able to pay their rent. There was one couple, I'm pretty sure one of them did not work during that time. The wife, I think she ended up working from home. I have a fair amount of tenants that work in the healthcare field, whether as a part of environmental services, cleaning the hospitals, or nurses aides or nurses or whatever. And those people, of course, they were working. Almost everybody was able to pay their rent. I was really, and I said that often to Ralph. I said, I am just feel so blessed that the group of tenants that we have, they've all been able to pay their rent. But there were a lot of landlords I know that really got the shaft, and they were really angry with the way the government handled it for these people, and the landlords were the ones that really took a beating. I felt really bad.
How long was the moratorium, you know?
I think it was over a year.
Oh, wow. So you potentially could have not received rent for a year.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I think the moratorium lasted 13 months or so. I'm not real sure. I think it was over a year. And then there was a period of time where you were supposed to start seeing those rents. I have a friend that I worked with in real estate. She ended up taking a job as at a rental management company. And she lasted there about a year. And part of the problem was that they had was dealing with these renters that did not pay their rent. And I'm sure that there are some people that genuinely could not pay their rent because of COVID. But I think there are many tenants, not any of mine, thank God, who took it as an opportunity not to pay their rent, period. So they're just it's going to be hard for cash flow. Yeah.
Well, and it's got to be hard if you're a regular landlord, as opposed to, I'm sure, a lot of, you get these billion-dollar corporations that own a bunch of rent, and that doesn't, I mean, it affects them, but they're able to sustain those losses.
Yeah.
Or so than an individual landlord.
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds like you got lucky during that period where pretty much everybody paid their rent. So that's good.
Yeah, we were really lucky, and I didn't have to tell anybody, but then I think part of that too is that higher credit score that I have with my tenants initially. They are generally responsible people. So that responsibility carried through during the hard time for them too. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good. There were a lot of people working from home. But like I said, I was lucky. I had a real people that were able to maintain their responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this again. I'll let you get back to that. I know you're enjoying your Florida weather, so I don't want to keep you from that.
No, but I have this crappy cold, so what are you gonna do?
That's no good. Well, you'd
Yeah.
probably rather have the cold in Florida than say Duluth, Minnesota right now, right? Because it's probably
Yeah, because it's
negative
not
10.
dry here. Yeah, it's not real dry like it
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't complain. And now in my retirement, I lack for nothing. I'm not concerned at all that that I'm not going to have anything by the time I die, and that I think at this point Ralph would, in a lot of ways, would like to sell all those rentals. But at the price that the buildings are at, the new landlord would have to get a lot more rent than what I'm charging my tenants. So, for me, that's an ethical thing too, I would hate to see all those people have to move and find something somewhere else and try to find something less expensive for them to maintain their level of happiness. So, so I think about that too. I raised rents last year for almost all the rentals, and I know that no one complained. They all understood it because they read the news and they knew that electricity was up and gas was up and blah 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 blah, and property taxes and everything else were higher, so they knew it. But I still felt really sad having to do it for a couple of those renters, because I know that they're not making a lot of money, and people that are renting most of them are not making a lot of money either, so
Yeah.
or elderly people.
Compassionate.
Yeah, so so that raising rents is what a lot of property management companies do. They'll even have it written in their lease that every year they might have a 3% increase in their rents, and those aren't bad things. It was probably better than the 7.5% increase in rents that I went through last year. If I would have kept doing even 1% along every year or something, but maybe that would have been probably better for me to do it 1% a year, but I don't think any of us knew that that things were going to get quite so costly. Yeah.
All right, Aunt Mary. Well, I appreciate you doing this. Tell Ralph I said hi. Tell Alan I said hi.
He's camera shy, so he didn't want to do this.
It's all right. You know what?
But he has a lot to offer. It's amazing to me.
Oh, I know. From speaking to him. Yeah. The last time I was up there.
Yeah. He has a lot to offer. I don't know if he would have said anything a little bit different. He'd probably say I'm too soft on the tenants, but I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll send you a copy of this, and then he can critique you if he wants.
Oh, yeah. He would smile. Yeah. If you think of anything else, let me know. If you want to redo the whole thing, we could.
No, it's okay. I'll hop off here, and then I'll give you a call on my cell phone.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Talk to you in a minute.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.